What's up, guys? Welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod. Dave here with a review of Shin Ultraman, the Japanese superhero kaiju film that I didn't really have any expectations for going in, but I actually thought was a lot of fun and pretty cool and unique. So, the reason I wanted to check out Shin Ultraman is because it's directed by the same co director of Shin Godzilla from 2016, which was a critically acclaimed film, and I think the most heralded Godzilla film in recent memory. Of course, there are many. Shinji Higuchi co-directed Shin Godzilla with Hideki Anno, and Higuchi directed Shin Ultraman, and Anno wrote, co-produced, and co-edited it. So it's basically the same creative team doing another reboot of a big Japanese film franchise. And like Shin Godzilla, this is in the Tokusatsu style, which is the Japanese term for live action with heavy use of practical effects. So that's kind of why I was quite interested in Shin Ultraman. Is I think from a filmmaking perspective, it's just a bit more interesting than a lot of the other stuff that you get over from Toho when it comes to these famous properties that we keep getting lots of stuff from. And Ultraman, I don't think it nearly as much of an impact in the West as Godzilla does. I think that's obvious, and didn't really know what to expect going in. I thought it was like, oh, kaiju, big monster movie, cool. I was actually surprised with how little kaiju stuff there is in Shin Ultraman. It very quickly becomes more of like a sci-fi extraterrestrial type story. The kaiju stuff is really more like the first 30 minutes, the first act. It's not as familiar as Godzilla stuff is, anyway. But that's not to say that there's not still a lot to like about Ultraman, Shin Ultraman. I think really just the effects, and of course there's plenty of special effects. It's not all practical, but the effects, I think, mixed with these practical effects, the use of miniatures and stuff, and it makes the effects seem timeless, like the kind of the mix of how this production worked. And I just found it all like quite charming to watch. And you had this music, very anime reminiscent, with these like horns and noticeable drum lines. Kind of gave me Cowboy Bebop vibes right away. um, and the dialogue and the plot is probably where I think people would probably have their most bones to pick. It's definitely hokey, it's definitely cheesy, but there's kind of an endearing nature to Shin Ultraman and the dialogue and of these characters. This movie, kind of came and went very quickly in the U.S. It had a 2-night Fathom Events release in January, one night subtitle, one night English language dub, and that was it. This came out months and months ago overseas, so at least it got some kind of release in the U.S. I unfortunately had to see the dub due to subtitling, so I didn't really get the full actors experience. But it was cool to see my guy Hideyotoshi Nishijima from Drive My Car, the star of Drive My Car. He's just part of the cast of Shin Ultraman, and this was a film back in 2019. This was filmed a while ago, but Nishijima, he is like the head of our group of main characters, which is this like special uh, government force that's tasked with tracking down these kaiju creatures that keep appearing out of nowhere and terrorizing Japan. And the next thing we know, Ultraman shows up out of nowhere, this 40-foot tall humanoid, and he's fighting the kaiju, seemingly a good guy. And our characters have to figure out what's up with Ultraman. Can we stop these kaiju? And things, like I said, with the plot really get off the rails and go in directions I did not expect. But I think the movie is like just committed enough, and the production is like charming enough that you can kind of just get on this ride, and you certainly need to get on this ride. Like it is definitely a out there type story, but I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's quite charming, and I actually quite enjoyed some of like the dialogue, one liners you got from a lot of the human characters, kind of like knocking uh, Japanese bureaucracy and government, Japan's status as almost like a vassal state to the United States. I thought that was quite amusing. Was getting a bunch of laughs in my theater, and yeah, I mean, if you like a monster movie, the first 30 minutes I thought was really good. The kaiju designs were super cool. The fights with Ultraman were great, and then it gets into the sci-fi stuff. But still, I think being with Ultraman and the mystery of Ultraman's identity, his purpose, his motives, all that stuff it is quite fun. So I would say seek out Shin Ultraman if you can. I think most people in the US will have to wait for VOD, but that's probably coming pretty soon. There's also a ton of clips already on YouTube because this came out overseas a while ago. So you can see it in various forms at this point. And I'll be definitely be looking later this year. We're getting from the same creative team. We're getting Shin Kamen Rider, the third, Tokusatsu like reboot from the same group. So that'll be interesting, and I'm curious if that'll maybe get a bigger release here in the U.S. We'll see. But yeah, let me know. What'd you think of Shin Ultraman? Were you able to catch it? Did you know anything about Ultraman before going in? I certainly did not. And yeah, for more movies, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.